What smell instantly takes you back to your childhood? Heavily chlorinated pool, the smell of bleach. When I was small, my mum took me to the pool for mummy and me swimming. Basically, it's to get your little one comfortable in the water at a young age. It's my earliest memory, and I absolutely effing hated it. I remember feeling angry that she kept dunking me in the cold water again. She would pull me to her chest, and I would start to warm up. Then she would push me back outward like they were supposed to, but I absolutely hated it. The smell of my grandparents' house. Boy, that was some good times. My aunties and uncles used to come with us, and I'll play with my twin sister and our cousins. Now, ever since he died, my aunties and uncles and cousins barely speak and meet up with us anymore. Back then, when inflation wasn't that much of a big deal, we used to get loads of pizzas, chips, and fizzy drinks. It's so sad knowing that I forgot my granddad and grandma voice, rip. The smell of new car tires and automotive shops. My dad works for a tire company and repair shop, so, when I was a kid, he came home smelling like his job. Eastern buses, etc., so he does more handshaking than tire slinging. But when I stop at the shop to see him or get my car worked on, the smell takes me back to the excitement of Dad being home from work. Damn, I was just thinking about this today. There was an exhaust fume smell coming from a van on the highway. It's a specific smell though. Can't put my finger on it, but it reminded me of my dad's old 86 Cutlass. Brought me back to all those times going fishing and driving nowhere, before life began to happen. That smell is sort of rare, but whenever I smell it, it always brings me back. Pipe tobacco smoke. For whatever reason, it always triggers fond memories of when I was 14 and worked in a welding shop as an apprentice. The main shop lead smoked a pipe and helped me out a lot. So whenever I smell that, it sends me back. It was one of the only jobs I've had that I really liked. Just really good vibes in that shop. This may be weird, but the smell of a diaper. Lee Zop needs diapers, he's 9. With Down syndrome, and I'm 19, so I was 10 when he was born and would change his wet diapers. But I changed now 6-year-old Ashley when she was a newborn all the time. Barbie plastic, school Lysol thingy. The smell of rubber print on shirts. The smell of little notebooks with scented pages popular in the 90s. Aunt's perfume, probably Eden or maybe Orangevert, but most probably a Duke ... Mirabelle plums, cut grass. Berry or watermelon scented lip gloss. Oh my god, I love all of them. A really good butcher's shop. I lived overseas as a toddler and a family friend was still as a butcher. ASD forward 12-13 years. When we resisted, I was 15 at the time, and the second we stepped into his shop, the smell activated my memories and déjà vu stronger than I have ever experienced before or since. I don't know. There's a specific perfume I owned when I was 10 or so. And I remember also being obsessed with Haunted Mansion around that time. Every so often I'll smell it when someone walks past me, and I'll be transported to my childhood living room couch watching Haunted Mansion. Wintergreen skull tobacco. Rare occurrence, I ever smell it as I don't chew. But my dad did for all of my childhood. And that was the only flavor he bought. For nostalgic sense, that one is a direct portal to my youth. Thankfully, he quit a few years after I left to college. Creosote, sawdust and rye. My dad worked his land weekends making and dipping lumber for railway ties. He had his own Taman sawmill. He often drank cry, "Miss you, Dad. You died far too young, 59. On my next birthday I'll have officially outlived you." Freshly laid asphalt. And I started at a new school in a new city in 4th grade. They were laying fresh asphalt outside the school for the first couple weeks of school. So every day at recess, I would smell that fresh asphalt. Still brings me back. Early spring air. Something about those first spring days after the cold, dreary months just snaps me back. It feels like a blow to the chest every time. Takes me a while to shake it off. After that I can actually start to enjoy the springtime. Hey, we had a horse and I loved the smell of fresh hay. After I moved away from our rural area, I would occasionally see a hay truck on the freeway. I'd get behind it and roll down my window so I could smell it. Brings me back every time. The smell of dead leaves outside in the woods. I grew up in the country and, along with my siblings and friends, we played in the woods constantly as little kids. We built forts, made trails for bike riding, and just had good times. Crayons, and I don't even know the name of it, but the lunch lady at my school used where so much of it. I instantly think of her and being that young as soon as I smell it on someone else 20 years later. Pine, like pine wood. I spent 21 summers on an island in the Pacific Northwest and it smelled of pine. Sometimes when I walk by pine wood in a busy city, I automatically get a good feeling. One of the best feelings ever. Asphalt being poured. For me it smells just like tar, which instantly takes me back to visiting this place in CEA where I grew up called the La Brea Tar Pits. My dad used to take me there all the time and I loved it. The smell of butter cooking on the stove. My mother would make it every Sunday when I was growing up and it takes me right back there every time. My very white GF has learned to make it very well and I love it. My partner 40 years old randomly made fish sticks a few years ago for the first time in living memory. I came in the kitchen and said what smells like second grade. He got a kick out of that. Whenever I'm in my home country, my grandmother always makes a special childhood favorite dessert, and I can always smell it. She's taught me how to make it myself, but hers is just so magical in smell. I had a Lionel train set as a child and played with it often. There was this oil that you squirted into the locomotive which created smoke as it went around the track. Can clearly remember that smell. The smell of pine for noble trees. When I was young, my dad owned and operated a Christmas tree stand, and it was my favorite place to be. I still tear up sometimes at the scent of a Douglas fir. Roasted white maize. I grew up in Kenya where they would sell roasted white maize on particular streets, and the local name for it was Mandy. Every time I smell that I get transported back home. The smell of a barn. I'm 10 years old. My parents are still married and we're visiting my uncle's ranch. The barn's full of leather saddles, harnesses, old buggies, hay, horses, kittens and manure. The smell of the inside of a pumpkin when you start carving it. It reminds me of all of the Halloweens I experienced growing up. I love light sticks too, especially the chunky green-yellow ones. Roasting chicken and vegetables smells like back to school. To this day it has programmed my brain to go learn something, especially when it's autumn. Fall is learning time. With chicken ... silage. Used to ride past a farm that put out some of the foulest smelling silage in the county every day on the way to school. Even getting a whiff of it now puts me back on the school bus. Toast and coffee takes me back to visiting my grandparents' house as a child. The smell of rain on the dry sidewalk on a hot day takes me back to childhood summers. I believe that's petrichor, an active racetrack. I grew up going to a lot of races and it's one of my favorite smells in the world. Dust, fuel, burnt rubber, scraped metal. Sometimes food, sometimes beer. I love it. I'm not sure of the brand of soap, but it's that pink one that doctors usually use. My elementary used to use the same exact one, and I can almost always instantly recognize that soap smell. Kool-Aid bursts. Between the pre-made Kool-Aid inside and the cheap soft plastic they use for the bottles, they have their own distinct smell. Always reminds me of summer break as a kid. There is this kindergarten smell. I can't quite describe what it is, but I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. I do know if it's a mixture of glue and construction paper or something. Burning dry wood. Me and my family used to have a lot of fire pits, and some of our best and deepest conversations were had sitting a bit too close to the fire. I still miss those nights. Kinda random, but the smell of a department store like Lowe's or Home Depot used to always go with my parents as a kid while we were renovating our home. Still one of my favorite smells. The smell inside a school, for obvious reasons. But I think it's the smell of the carpets if I had to take a guess. and maybe wooden graphite shavings from pencils. Construction sites. As a kid, I was always getting dragged to them by my parents or messed around them after hours doing petty stuff like breaking glass bottles. There is a restaurant called the Steamboat in Iowa. Walking into that place, it's instant. Also the perfume exclamation. It was all my mum wore when I was a kid. That smell of the fake Halloween plastic on masks and shit like that instantly reminds me of crafting my costumes when younger and going trick-or-treating. Weird, but creosote. It covered the timbers in the parking lot of the swimming hole park where we used to go on weekends when I was a kid. Loved it there. My mum used to make a hamburger, macaroni, stewed tomato casserole with Velveeta slices on top. That smell will instantly bring me back to 9 years old. Warm pine needles. Grew up in Jersey when there was less houses in the neighborhood and no internet. The woods is where we lived until sundown. A certain fake marshmallow smell brings me back to the Christmas I got a whole holiday tin of Born Bell lip smackers. One was marshmallow. Cigarettes. Oddly enough, I grew up in a place where smoking was very common. It's not a good smell, but it does give me warm feelings. Combo of Belmont cigarettes, Dolce & Gabbana light blue. My grandma smoked a lot, then would spray her DG to cover the smell. Hubba Bubba gum, fresh mowed lawn, diesel exhaust, the dentist office, the smell of tomatoes, lavender pine sol, old book pages.